Building Men is brought to you by Finish the Race Apparel, FTRapparel.com, the creators of all things building men, and by Become Stronger Industries, become-stronger.com, the creators of handmade steel maces, hammers, and other badass equipment.
I'm coming to the point where, I'm not moving in the gym athletically the way that I had before. Man, there was such a transition that had to happen mentally and emotionally that had to take place in order for me to be able to still get some joy out of, being in the gym. The thought of finding purpose outside of yourself is something that I have leaned on and had to really embrace. And that's, for me, that's been serving people.
You're listening to the Building Men podcast with Dennis and Anthony Miralda, brothers on a mission
to help you become the strongest version of yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
What's up, brother? What's up, brother? So it's funny, I was like thinking about starting the episode with a little Hulk Hogan thing. I interviewed a guy, his name is Lance Kennedy, and his whole thing is build your legend or legend builders. And I was thinking about legends as I was growing up.
Yeah.
And it automatically went into sports figures. So I was thinking legends, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, Joe Montana. And I was thinking Hulk Hogan was an absolute legend in the 80s when I was growing up. Not that I was a big wrestling guy, but Hulk Hogan was the man. And his whole thing was, brother, what's up, brother?
And first of all, how tall was Hulk?
I want to see
because in Rocky
6'6".
he was like 6'9".
Oh well, that's because
7'3".
Rocky is really like Sylvester Stallone is like 5'1", but they pretend he's like 6 foot.
Yeah, they put him
they
up.
needed his name was Thunder Lips.
Thunder Lips,
and that's in Rocky 3 when he fought Clever Lang.
Yeah,
his name was Thunder Lips, and they got into the fight, and Rocky actually body slammed Hulk Hogan, but they said he was like 7 foot, 380 pounds or some shit like that.
And I remember what's funny about Hulk Hogan, I don't even know if you know this, but at our next door neighbor's house, they had a framed signed picture of Hulk Hogan. And I used to be scared to walk into that room because there was that picture of him. And I was deathly afraid. I didn't even realize I was afraid of Hulk Hogan, but in that room, I wouldn't even go in there because I would see the picture and I would get frightened. Wow. And I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. So that's why
when you
shirtless men scare me now. That's why I run whenever a man takes off his shirt. I just scream and go into the fetal position. So I feel like you need to do
like that behavioral therapy where you need to spend more time with shirtless men to go into the pain.
And that could lead to many different avenues from there. So, I mean, that sounds exciting.
So I brought up Hulk Hogan because his voice is a guilty pleasure for me. I love hearing the "What's up, brother?" I love weird stuff like that. There's actually a thing on YouTube. It's 10 hours worth of Hulk Hogan saying, "What's up, brother?" I shit
Is that
not.
that's like your white noise that you go to sleep
when I'm going to sleep, I have Hulk Hogan playing saying, "What's up, brother?" in the background. But I wanted to start with real quick before I bring our guest on, because we like to start with something off the rails a little bit. Guilty pleasures. So that's a guilty pleasure for me. Another guilty pleasure I will say is, and you'll appreciate this, on Instagram, every once in a while, like, I don't spend a ton of time on Instagram other than what I'm doing for work, but every once in a while I'll scroll through, and there are 3 different things that come up that I'm fascinated with. One was this Asian woman who would do this dance, and it was like you suck in your stomach and then you push out your stomach and you suck in your stomach, and it was like to this like really techno beat. And I would stop when I'm scrolling and I would be fascinated with her, like, oh my God. And she didn't speak English, but it was like crazy to me. And I'm like, oh my God, like I need to watch this. All of a sudden she's filling my feed with, she's all over the place. Right. And so I would send it to you. I would send it to Julie. I would send it to the kids. They're like, Dad, stop. That's enough.
Literally my feed was then filled with it because I would open up all of your DMs that you would send me of all these Asian women that were doing these weird belly. And they just kept going, and it was like a minute and a half of that. Yep. And then all of a sudden now everything is filled with it. That. And you love that shit.
Loved it. And then there's a guy, his name is Sam Barsky, and he's a knitter, and he knits or crochets sweaters and then takes pictures of himself with the sweater on in front of whatever he knitted. So the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, the Grand Canyon. And he's like, This is my Eiffel Tower sweater. This is me standing in front of the Eiffel Tower wearing my Eiffel Tower sweater. And I got fascinated with him, so I would send that to you guys. coincidentally enough, we reached out to him. We're going to interview this guy in the podcast, which it's like, and he has like a huge following too. And then the last is this guy. He's from England, and he's fascinated with trains. I don't know if I've ever sent you the train.
No,
guy.
I don't think so.
And he does a GoPro camera facing his face, and as trains come by, he gets all excited, and you see his face is like, whoa, and the train is coming, and I'm fascinated with this guy too. That's a guilty pleasure of mine, is like finding people like that are way outside of the norm on Instagram or something, and then I get obsessed with them, and then I share it with other people. That's a guilty pleasure of mine. Do you have a guilty pleasure that you're willing to share with the audience that's appropriate for people to listen to?
Appropriate?
Yeah, because I was going to say that cuts like 13 things off your table that you can share with us, because it needs to be appropriate.
Well, let's just go on Instagram for one thing. And this started showing up on my feed, and I didn't know why, but it's because I fucking watch it every time, and that's why it shows up. And I'm like, why is this on here? It's literally guys getting their haircuts, but they have like weird things going on with their head. I don't know. They have like a scar or something like that, and they have to like work around their scars on their head, and they're giving them this fade. And I end up watching it, and I'm like, why is this on? Why is this on my feed? Why is this on my feed? And I keep opening it up and looking at it, and it's not even enjoyable.
Wow.
I don't even know. I guess I enjoy it because I keep watching it.
Yeah,
but
they gotcha.
Yeah, they reeled me right in. Or it'll be like watching like insects eat other like smaller insects, and I'll just watch like the whole process of that, and I fucking hate it.
Yeah,
but I can't stop watching it. I'm just like completely lured in by this thing.
That's amazing. Well, our guest has a beautiful head, an absolutely perfect head. I'm going to use that as a segue to introduce George Dobbins. He is an Enflifted coach. He's a transformational coach. He's a CrossFit gym owner, a husband, a father, a man of faith. What's up, George? How's it going, my man?
Man, it is going so good. So good. So good to just be here and hear about shaved heads and haircuts. That's so odd.
So weird. I know.
Oh, man.
So one thing about George, I mean, he's got a great voice. Now I'm so in tune with voices on podcasts, and you start to self-criticize a little bit when you start listening back. You're like, you know what? I'm liking my voice again now on the podcast, but you appreciate good voices on interviews, and George does have a really good voice. Is that something you've always had, this like buttery smooth voice?
Sweet honey.
No, man, Dennis, no one has ever. That's probably one of the best comments I ever heard. I don't think anybody's ever told me that, man.
Can you introduce Barry White, Let's Get It On as the next song coming up on the radio?
I can try.
Let's hear it. Give us our or you could do Marvin Gaye, Sexual Healing, something like that. That's what I want to listen to.
WNBC.
Or who are we doing? We're doing we'll do Barry White. Let's get it on. Yeah, baby. I don't even know how the song even goes. You have to play the lyrics on the screen.
Right.
We got to do a karaoke thing.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, George, it's really good to have you on the podcast, man. We connected a couple months back. We connected through the Enflifted program. We're going through, are starting the Enflifted level 2 certification, and you're in with a couple people that we know. One who we've had on the podcast, Kevin Demmons, who does Scarred and Unbeaten. Kevin Demmons, who is coincidentally enough partners or works with Akshay Nanavate, who wrote the book Fear Vana. And anyone that's listening right now, if I can make a recommendation of a book to listen to or buy, it's Fear Vana by Akshay Nanavate. I'm on the third time that I'm going through that book. I have the hard copy of the book, and I'm listening to it for the second time, and Akshay is narrating the book. 100% recommend that book. One of the best books I've ever read. It helps you understand pain, fear, suffering. And you could go back and check out Akshay on our podcast, episode 116. Great dude. So part of the Enflifted program level 2 is celebrating the wins in your life. Like, as a coach, how do you help your clients celebrate wins? So talk to us about a win that you've had recently. Let's start there.
Man, that's a good question. Well, a win that I have had recently. All right. So I guess a win that I had recently was a recent trip that we took actually earlier this week. I was able to completely unplug, and that means from everything, right? In the mountains in PA. Actually, this is where This is where I will be hosting a retreat as we get into later in October for a group of men. But being out there and just being unplugged. And Dennis, I know that, I'm sure you guys are busy. Anthony, you guys are busy. And there's so many things that go through our minds all the time. Being able to unplug, that was a huge win for 2 whole days. Come on, 2 whole days.
Right. Is that part of your regular routine? Do you try to unconnect or disconnect from social media, from technology at all during the course of your regular routine?
You know what? There's a period of time. There's only one time or 1 hour of the day in which I completely unplug. And in our house, it's called Power Hour. So it's from the start of dinner. Everything's I power everything down. It's not even, hey, let's put the phone off to the side or turn it upside down or put it in a different room. It's power off, unplug. And that's 1 hour of the day. That's 1 hour of the day that I have no interaction with social media, any technology. And we have dinner. And then we follow dinner with an activity, whether it's a walk, whether it's a board game, whether it's celebrating wins. So that's 1 hour a day.
I had a different power hour in college, but it didn't lead to good things. But
what was it? A shot of beer a minute for an hour? Is that what the power hour was?
Yeah. Normally it would end up you like finishing a beer in that like minute. You would end up just crushing it.
Yeah.
By the end, you have no idea where you're at. But yours sounds a lot better than mine was.
Healthier.
But I was thinking back to like when we were kids growing up and how. Imagine going to the bathroom right now and taking a dump and not bringing your phone in, or if you're waiting in the doctor's office or you're waiting in line at the grocery store and you don't have your phone with you. Like that was a common thing. We would just have to be present. And now we have to instill these times where we're disconnected because it's impossible to not be disconnected unless you actually schedule it out. Where before, that could just be considered mindfulness, right? Just being present wherever you are, and we didn't have to try. And now as time goes on, we literally have to do exactly what you're doing because otherwise you just get lost in it and all this information, and it's like overload for a lot of us.
Absolutely.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And, what I found is, the ideal of, all right, well, let me go ahead and put my phone away for me was almost it's still on. So it's still accessible. Right. And so, the idea of just kind of completely powering it down has been a practice that I've been doing within our household for going on our 2nd year. It's been pretty cool. But I totally, I'm the guy that will go to the bathroom, right, and I'm at the urinal and I'm like this.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Funny story is I was in Starbucks. I was in Starbucks doing the same thing, and I'll just send you the picture because I took a picture of it too. I was in Starbucks doing the same thing, peeing in front of the toilet, and I go to pick my phone up, and I pick my phone up, and it drops into the toilet. Not fun at all, right? Not your own toilet, right? You're in Starbucks; it's a different toilet, right? So I had to go fish it out. Nonetheless, it was frantic. I didn't even think twice about it. It was like so my son's in the water and can't swim. I'm like, let me go get it.
Yeah, dive in head first. Here we go. Was it a regular toilet or was it a urinal?
Man. No, it was a toilet.
Toilet.
Oh no!
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, the picture that you sent to us, and I was just when you said you were going to send us a picture, I was like, is this going to be a dick pic, a Building Men dick pic?
Yeah, I mean, he's saying he's in the bathroom, so I'm like, we've never gotten one. Building Men exclusive.
Oh, jeez.
So, what it made me think of in urinals, I was out at Wrigley Field. It's funny.
I just
you don't know where this is going, right? I was at Wrigley Field 2 weekends ago. I was in Chicago. Went to Wrigley Field and then saw a White Sox game as well, which is Chicago is such a cool city. Really, really unbelievable city. I love the vibe there. It's the 2nd or 3rd time I've been to Chicago, but first time in many years. And so I'm in the bathroom at Wrigley Field, and Wrigley Field used to have a trough. Mm-hmm. So we would be standing across from each other pissing. Like you're making eye contact with another person. It was just like a big trough right in the center. That's how it used to be. They still have a trough thing, but now it's against the wall. Right. So it's not like you have your own individual. So you could saunter up right next to somebody and go like shoulder to shoulder,
sword fighting as you're peeing.
Yeah. So if you're on your phone, George, like someone could be like next to you, like swiping through your phone as
they're like, ha!
In your end. Yeah, like,
I saw that.
Look at that guy!
Gosh.
Look at that guy with the sweaters! Look at that Asian woman dancing! That's
so
amazing! That's so
that
funny.
weird misshapen head getting a haircut. What the fuck is wrong with you?
So tell us about your guilty pleasure, if any. Is there anything that you were like, oh man, this is kind of weird that I like this, but I really enjoy it?
Man, guilty pleasure. I am definitely a sucker for like a rom-com, like just a romantic comedy. I haven't seen one in a while, but that's definitely Something About Mary is probably like one of my all-time favorite ones. But nonetheless, I'm a sucker for a rom-com.
Just thought about this. I feel like we talked about it in the podcast before, but I don't know why this came up as you're talking about rom-coms. It has nothing to do with it, but feeling spackle, like the texture of spackle to me, like when we would work with our father and we would go, I would literally take this sounds so weird. I would take it, and when he wasn't looking, I would literally just play with it like Play-Doh, because to me, like, the texture was so enjoyable, and it was just something like feeling that in my hand. And I would be covered in spackle in my hands and just ruin. And he'd be like, "What the hell did you get all that on you? Like, we're barely using any spackle." And I'm taking it into the back room to go feel it.
And spackle hardens pretty quickly.
Really quickly, I know.
So, and then you're in the bathroom and you're like, why can't I piss right now? Because you have like a mold of your penis from the spackle.
Exactly. So
wow, that's an interesting
it's really
thing.
Weird. Yeah.
So,
all right. Anyway,
I'm glad we never talked about that, because I feel like we would have gotten you help for that sooner.
Yeah,
if I
it's been a serious problem. If you're wondering why I have so many empty spackle jars in my apartment.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one whole wall is spackle buckets. Another 5 gallons.
How many holes do you have in your apartment?
And how are they getting there? How the hell are they getting there?
Why aren't they fixed yet?
So the rom-coms, Something About Mary is an all-time great movie. And the way that they basically like bridge this gap that was there as far as like pushing the limits, when Ben Stiller comes to the door and Mary's at the door and he's got the ejaculation hanging from his earlobe. Yeah. And she's like, what is that? Is that hair gel? And he's like whips around and it's like flopping all over, and she puts it in her hair. That was like, I remember watching it and like, oh my God, I can't believe
they couldn't play that movie now. There's no way you could would allow that.
Oh gosh.
That's a great, and then the Franks and beans, like, how are the beans over the Frank? Like,
yeah.
How'd you get the beans over
How'd
the
you
Frank?
get the beans over the Frank?
Oh my God, such a good movie. What's your do you have like an actor that you love? Like McConaughey is like an all-time great rom-com actor. Do you have a guy that you're like, oh, I need to follow everything that Matthew McConaughey's doing or something like that?
No, Ben Stiller's one, but Adam Sandler has always been, like my go-to guy. There's one where, what is a movie where he plays in, and I believe he keeps on does he keep on forgetting something, or he keeps on forgetting?
50 First Dates.
50 First Dates.
Drew Barrymore.
Barrymore.
She has like this rare condition that she has no long-term memory, so she forgets everything every single day, and he falls in love with her.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
That's a great one.
Yeah, Adam Sandler, good, but Matthew McConaughey, so good too. Have you seen or read? I listen because I do both. I read and listen, but his book Green Lights, amazing.
Tremendous.
Amazing. The Audible, so good. And I mean, he has that voice, right? You talk about my voice. Yeah. He has that voice.
All right.
This is legendary.
It's so good. Yep.
Oh, yeah, so good. Yeah. So Matthew McConaughey, I'm a fan. Adam Sandler, I'm a fan.
I'm gonna wrap it back around to 50 First Dates, but a funny story about Green Lights. My girlfriend Julie's son Liam just graduated high school, is attending college in Delaware, starting at the end of August. And for his birthday or for Christmas, I forget, but I got him Audible, and I told him, you need to listen to Green Lights. He loved Danny Waterford from what's the movie? Dazed and Confused. Mm-hmm. He loved, that's where the all right came from. And he talks about that in the audiobook too. So I bought him the book, and you're gonna love this. It's such a Liam move. So this is my girlfriend's son Liam. loves listening to the audiobook. And I was talking to him about it the other day, and I'm like, how great is the book? He's like, yeah, man. He's like, he drives from Pennsylvania down to Delaware very frequently. He's like, I get in the car and I put on the book and, I listen to Matthew McConaughey. It's amazing. And I'm like talking to him about something that happened in his life towards the twilight of the book, right? So the last like hour of the book about his acting career. And Liam's like, well, I never got to that part. And I was like, you've had the book for like 6 months now. You told me that you listened to it. He's like, well, I get in the car and it pops up and I start it and I listen to it and I get about 3 hours in. And then when I get in the car again, it pops up and I started from the beginning and I listened to about 3 hours. And I'm like, wait a second, you're listening to only the beginning of the book. I'm like, you can stop it and then start from.
He was starting over?
Starting it over every single time. I was like, you basically have to drive to Florida then. You have to drive all the way to Florida if that's what you're doing right now.
Was he confused?
I don't know. But I feel like I need to help him out.
That's
in some
a special
capacity.
moment. I like that.
I love the kid. Love him to death. But that's what we had a conversation
That's
about.
great.
51st dates with Sandler and Drew Barrymore. She has this short-term memory, and her memory resets every 24 hours. And so he basically has to start over and reintroduce himself every single day. So when she wakes up, there's a video playing. Don't freak out. I'm your boyfriend. Here's what our journey is together. And he figured this out along the way. So our 51st dates moment here, George. So if we had an opportunity, we never knew you before and you had to introduce yourself to the audience, tell us something really interesting about your past or your upbringing that, would help us get to know you a little bit more. You like that segue? Right on.
God, I want to give you a hug right now. That was beautiful.
I like it. Man, I came to the States. I was born in the Philippines. Volcano erupts. And we have 24 hours to do like this emergency evac. So that there in itself was just such a memory for me. And a lot of times, who says, man, I did a 24-hour emergency evac and had to, come from here to there, and because a volcano erupted. So nonetheless. Born in the Philippines, came to the States, actually to Dover Air Force Base. My father was Air Force.
How old were you, George?
One of the, I was, so it was 91. That probably put me around, I guess it was in third grade, going to third grade. So I guess that would have been like 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Pretty wild. Dude, I remember living in like during that transition, right? So we evacuated my mother, who father was stationed in Manila, in the Philippines, and met my mother. My mother, man, one of the most sweetest ladies at times, right?
Right.
But she'll do anything for anybody, and this very sweet lady, not a high school education, and had to essentially transition to the States with not one kid, but 6 kids, right? There's 6 of us. I have myself and 5 siblings by herself. Obviously with the company of the Air Force and assistance of the Air Force. But yeah, that's pretty wild, right?
That is a wild story. And it's funny. I remember growing up with our sister Tara, who Tara is 2 years younger than I am. And I remember we would hang out together and we would the couches would be like whatever. We'd throw the cushions on the floor and the cushions were rocks and the floor was lava. So we had to bounce from one spot to another to get away from the lava. I really overestimated the impact that lava would have on my life. I've never really experienced lava ever, but I did think as a kid, lava was a legit thing that you were going to have to get over. You, George, are one of the few humans in the world that really potentially could have experienced lava and trying to get away from hot lava.
Yeah, no, pretty wild, right? Instead, we were the ones that would jump into the ash, right? Because I don't know your extent of volcanoes and the understanding, but in our transition, there was ash was being dropped, and there was ash that was 4 or 5 feet high. It was pretty wild. So, as any other kids, we would jump out from the window from the second story into the ash.
Jeez.
It was nuts, and what was amazing, man. And this is a moment where you think about humanity, and we would post up into strangers' homes for, couple nights in transition. And it funneled into that kind of evacuation, right? It wasn't planned, right? It was very off the cuff, and I don't think they've expected it, and it was pretty wild. Sleeping outside a few nights, but most of the time we were able to, be taken in by total strangers.
Wow.
And your family was planning on coming to the States regardless, but did that just like kickstart it a little bit earlier than you were expecting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't even know how that transitioned. I just know that with the Air Force, I don't know if it was a matter of, hey, we need to get them out, and where do we have openings, right? And yeah, it's kind of landed us at Dover Air Force Base.
Yeah.
So now you come over here, you're third grade, 8 years old in that time frame, 1991-esque time frame, right around like Vanilla Ice is on the radio, Ice Ice Babies being played as you're coming over. I'm just rechanneling. That's the year that you were born.
That is the year. That was an excellent year for the world.
Giants won the Super Bowl 5 days after you were born. They beat the Buffalo Bills.
You're welcome.
2019. Yeah.
That's
good
right.
luck. So what do you remember about your experience in middle and high school as you transitioned from the Philippines over to the United States? Anything stick out as far as like life lessons that you learned during that time?
Man, life lessons, middle, high school, what really stands out? Man, I would say the first thing is basketball, man, right? So playing high school basketball through middle school and through high school, played a couple of different sports, soccer, basketball, and anything special, but I was a pretty good basketball player. I was a good point guard. And my freshman year, played, actually ended freshman year, skipped JV, played varsity, going into my sophomore year. And in that process, I played with a really great player. He was All-State. He was All-State Player of the Year. I mean, you could throw this ball up anywhere near the bucket and he would catch it. And he was putting it down. Crazy talent, wild. Ended up going to play for Oklahoma State University. But during that time, I remember at the end of that year, throughout that season, I didn't return my junior year. And I remember at the end of the season, I decided to tell my coach I wasn't coming back. And so we talk about lessons. I quit basketball not because I didn't like it or I didn't enjoy it. I quit basketball because of the pressure that was associated with me playing and the expectation that was put on me, and that maybe I also put on myself from other players of the team, from people in the stands, from my coaches. And I allowed the external pressures to essentially allow me to quit playing. It was one of those periods where I just didn't feel like I was good enough, or I felt as if I didn't want to screw up, or I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want to be reamed at, by the best player on the team because I couldn't throw the proper alley-oop, right? And man, so when you talk about memories or experiences, quitting basketball after my sophomore year was that for me.
That resonates with me a lot, George, and in this way. I went from freshman baseball, had a game or two at the end of my freshman season on varsity, and then started varsity my sophomore season. My first ever at bat in varsity, I hit a grand slam. And then it was like the bar was set so high. I did really well. I made honorable mention for all county. So going into my junior year, now I was the man. I was the one. I was getting ink in the paper about the next, big thing. I was getting scouted by D1 coaches. The head coach of Rutgers came to see me in my first ever game, my junior year pitching, and the pressure fucked me up so bad that I really went into a hole. I started like hanging out with a bad crowd. I started drinking all the time. And I had a horrible junior season. I went from where I was like one of the top pitchers in the entire county to going 0-5 my junior year. And I almost quit. I almost quit the sport as well. And I remember Dad is like, you should just quit. You don't love it anymore. You should just quit. I remember having the conversation with him in the driveway. So it resonates with me. And I think a lot of it comes from you burst onto the scene when no one expected. And once there's the expectation put on you, like, what does that pressure do to you? I had a conversation yesterday with a guy who went to school in South Carolina to become a golfer, or he went to golfing high school and then went to the University of Houston to golf. And we talked about, he said he golfs so much better in poor conditions, when it was like 40-mile-an-hour winds and torrential rain, because there were no expectations that he was going to be successful. He said once that happened, he's like, oh, I could just relax and play the game now. Once it was like a beautiful sunny day, his asshole tightened up and he had a really tough time with it. So it's interesting that you picked that out, and I appreciate your level of vulnerability there, sharing that experience with us. So fast forward now, you have this experience where you're like, I gave up something because of the expectations and because I wasn't quite confident enough in myself and my abilities. How did that turn into you after high school, like wanting to get into the fitness space? So bridge the gap there for us on that journey.
Yeah. So from that point, transition from basketball to weightlifting my junior, my senior year. And then from that point, the process behind that to from quitting the sport of basketball to now picking up and transitioning into something totally different. And you have to remind me, Dennis, you mentioned the segue between then into where I'm at now, or?
Yeah. So like fill us in a little bit in that gap, and we could jump in and ask some follow-up questions. So you left basketball. That was your main sport. You got into training and lifting, and then ultimately into the CrossFit space. So how did you walk us through that journey, how you got from one place to the other there?
Yeah. So graduated high school, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, right? I had a brother who went to Penn State, and he's went to the Air Force Academy, or the ROTC program, went to Penn State. I had another brother who joined the military, and I'm like, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And after high school, I decided that I enjoyed fitness and I enjoyed people. So two things. I coupled those two things together, and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and work inside of a gym. So from there, picked up my first job right from high school. Right after high school, was working inside of a gym, inside of YMCA, right? So I was a fitness instructor. I had the little collar T-shirt on. I had, the little magnetic nameplate, and I was just, I was more babysitting, right? Have you ever been in a YMCA? You see the instructors, or they're not necessarily a coach per se, but they're, hey, you may see someone on the leg press that might have, a rounded back, or the pads resting on the back of their head, and their low backs. You're like, hey, I don't know if that's the right way to do that. So I was more there, just kind of supervising, but from there, I started to get the bug to really do something with this. And I attended the National Personal Training Institute. So there was a residential program that was down in Florida, attended there maybe for 2 weeks, got homesick, came back up this way. And I had to end up graduating the program out of a satellite school, the National Personal Training Institute in Wilmington, Delaware, actually. And then from there, jumped to the space. I jumped into the training space, started doing quite a bit of personal training, did some competitive bodybuilding for about 4 years, and decided that I wasn't crossing over to the dark side, where it just ended up being a situation where you had to decide, if you're going to really pursue this and do it well or compete, competed in a couple of shows that I thought were drug-free. And I'm like, man, I don't know. So nonetheless, short period, competitive bodybuilding, personal training, fell in love with CrossFit. First CrossFit workout, 3 bars of death. I think its technical name is Linda, right? It's a bodyweight bench press, a 3/4 bodyweight clean, and then a bodyweight and a half on the deadlift, right? So you have a triplet, 3 movements. Descending ladder, 10-to-1. I'm going on CrossFit.com back in the day, because this is like 2006, right? This is like my first CrossFit workout. And this is when, I think I'm going to do a CrossFit coach. And then it was like, I jump online, go onto the Google boards or the forums, and it was like 18 minutes, 16 minutes, 20 minutes. I'm like, man, I thought I was really doing well. It took me 69 minutes to complete this descending ladder from 10 to 1. And I thought I was in shape. I thought I was in shape. I was strong, fit. Yeah. And that's when I was like, you know what? I need to maybe think about how I'm approaching fitness. And that's when I kind of left the conventional means of exercise and training and then transitioned to CrossFit.
In your experience in CrossFit, do you see a lot of people that are coming in your situation where they're like, oh, I want to get involved in it? And CrossFit, from my experience, I've never I've done CrossFit workouts. We've done several workouts together. But in that space, I always felt it was like culty, like quote unquote culty. And there were a couple of times where I was working out in the gym where I train, and there was like a CrossFit group there, and I felt like I was like the kid, that came to school and, had milk packed in his lunchbox from his mom. And then she wrote like a little note, and they were like the cool kids looking at me like I don't belong there. That's how I felt when there was like a CrossFit group. But guys that are coming in or girls that are coming in, and this is a brand new thing, do you see a lot of injuries? Because I was like, yeah, I could fucking do that ladder workout. I could do this. I could do the Sue or the Maria or the.
Because it's always the stigma attached to CrossFit, right? All the time. So it's you're gonna get injured if you do it, or it's very culty about it, like it's not, you're either in or you're in the way, and there's no way to regress it or progress it. It's just, this is the workout. And I think that's always attached to the CrossFit world from outsiders who don't know CrossFit.
So how do you go about dispelling those preconceived notions
myths and things like that?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you can jump in your car, and if you don't know how to drive your car, it can be awful, right? I think you would agree. It can be really bad, right? You jump in a car and not knowing how to drive it. Yeah, not good, right? It's almost like you jump into CrossFit not knowing how to CrossFit. Yeah, good luck. It can be really bad, right? So I believe that there's an understanding and learning curve, an approach to learning a new skill, whether it's driving a car, learning a new skill such as CrossFit, that obviously you put yourself at risk potentially doing both of those things, right? But if you learn how to do it correctly, if you learn how to, hey, this is how you pump on the brakes, right? This is how you accelerate, right? So in this case, this is how you scale down the load on the barbell, right? In order to meet the intention of this specific workout, right? So folks all the time, the ideal is, hey, learn how to CrossFit before you cross it, just like you learn how to drive before you get behind the wheel, right? So that's been a very like just sensible approach, and I think we can both just hear and listen and see and maybe even agree on.
Coming off what you're saying, I think a lot of people's introduction to CrossFit is going online and going on like Wadwell or one of these CrossFit websites, picking a workout, not having understood any of the movements itself, not doing all the prereqs to get to that point, and trying one of the workouts and then hurting themselves, and they go, CrossFit's terrible, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the issue with it, is now they label it even though they didn't do all the necessary work to get to that point. And it always leads them to some sort of injury or something like that, which isn't necessarily from CrossFit. It's the fact that they didn't know what the hell they were doing. Just like you can get injured doing any movement, right? It's just easy to point the finger at something outside of you. And the other thing I love about CrossFit, which I think you can't even put a price on this, is the community aspect of it, is the fact that you have someone who's got your back. You have someone who's holding you accountable, and it's not the coach necessarily, it's the person next to you doing the workout right alongside you. And that person, and I've seen people go in there and the ages range from 18 to 68 years old, and like you said, it's all scalable. Everyone's doing a similar workout and everyone's pushing each other. Everyone's getting behind each other as they're working really hard and busting their ass. And to me, that's what makes it so powerful. That's what makes CrossFit something that's like, I want to buy into this. I want to get involved in some capacity.
Yeah, so good. I mean, I think you hit it right on the dot there. I mean, the community, and I can also see how that can also maybe even play against you too, right? I think we all agree what you just mentioned, the thought of that synergy that's created, right? You look across the room and man, you see Dennis just like, pumping out, doing his best, grinding, gritting, going through it. Man, that that I look at that and that inspires me. That encourages me to do the same, right? To push past, the next couple of reps, to, pick the barbell back up. But then at the same time too, you can also look at that and you're like, man, maybe pick up a little bit too much energy, right? And maybe putting yourself in a position that is maybe not the best for you. So also knowing when to really upregulate, really when to pick up on that, and maybe when to scale that down. So when we think about CrossFit, there's always an awareness that we want to be able to give each person that comes into a workout, right? Being able to lay down the intention of the workout, right? The intention is for you to be able to, be able to complete 10 reps and still feel as if you can maybe do another, 5 to 7 if you had to. Or the intention is for you to go out the gate as hard as you can. You should be laying on your back at the completion of this workout. But being able to share that, and then also being able to create an awareness of hey, what is it, or how can I push my body? Because I believe a lot of times people go into these environments and not even with that understanding, that awareness. They look at the website, they pull a workout, right? Wad Will, you mentioned, they pull it and they just go after it. And a lot of times it's done inappropriately, it's done improperly, because one, we just have the wrong mindset, the wrong perspective behind the intention or the steps behind the workout.
Building men of character, integrity, strength, compassion, and empathy through transformational mentoring, coaching, and motivational speaking is our mission here at Building Men. To work with me as a one-on-one life coach, you can find information in the show notes, or you can visit our website at buildingmen.io, where you can book a free 30-minute discovery call to help you become the strongest version of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Now, back to the show. So I'm also interested, George, in the way that you motivate people as well. Like there's this whole Enflifted piece where it's, coaching through and helping people with their breath work and the self-limiting beliefs and that Billy story, the negative self-talk that's coming along with you. So there's that way of looking at it. And then you look all the way in the other direction. There's David Goggins, who's like, get the fuck out there and do it. Like he's like in your face, like pumping you up and like almost like putting you down along that journey. How do you go about doing it? What's your strategy to motivate people? Or is it differentiated by the person, like what they specifically need?
Yeah, such a good question. My approach or strategy when it comes to motivating people. So I take a fairly sensible approach, right? And it's not so much of a David Goggins, right? Go ahead and do it, pick it up. What are you doing? Maybe even comes with like maybe even the tone of like a Jocko Willink, right? It's very very, very just low and just very under control. The approach that I take would probably be like a hybrid, maybe between the two, right? It's a knowing when to maybe escalate and elevate the voice, and knowing when to bring it down. So it's very much upon person to person. But at the end of it, what is behind any conversation is truth, is being able to come back to that. And what that is, hey, we are here right now. We have this opportunity. We get to move our bodies. And, essentially when we frame it in a perspective that gives us opportunity, that is forward thinking, that is the approach that I tend to take in any situation when it comes to motivating individuals and bodies.
Tremendous. My last question for you before I turn it over to Anthony is, you're doing some event at some point in the fall up in the Poconos. I'd love to hear about that. I'd love for you to share what you're doing and how you're impacting people in that capacity.
Yeah. So October 28th to the 30th, I dubbed this weekend as the Foundry. And the Foundry is a time of like casting and molding, right? So we think of the foundry and you think of, metal and and bending and shaping. It's iron sharpens iron. So it's a weekend of men getting together, and we get out on a Friday. We have a half Friday, all day Saturday, half a Sunday, and we're back in our homes. But this weekend essentially is based off of a couple different things. There's some physical work, right? But Dennis, man, the gist and the meat and potatoes of this weekend is going to be a lot of language work, right? A lot of story work and posturing the mind. So you can say mindset, a lot of mindset work. But the thought is for us to be able to get some things out that we probably haven't had the opportunity to do, right? And then just finding the silver lining behind those pieces and being able to get unstuck from where we're currently at and those limiting factors that have held us back, and maybe even the pieces that we don't even know that are holding us back, and becoming aware of those things and those words and how we maybe unconsciously put ourselves in these positions to experience these feelings that stop us from moving forward, right? So it's definitely gonna be a catalyst of a weekend, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's going to induce some change, and that's going to get some things moving in the right direction, and it's going to be great. It's going to be phenomenal. So that's we're going to be hanging out in Everett, PA, right over the Maryland line into PA in the mountains. It's going to be too easy, man. Covering lodging, covering transportation up. Where often do you say, hey, just hop in the van, right? Rented a 15-passenger van. Yeah. You don't have to worry about driving. Right. Yeah. So we're driving them up. We cover lodging, covering all the food, right? So we're covering breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I say we're covering, I'm not cooking it. We have just the staff on the site. I mean, it's going to be, it's a first class of a weekend. So that's coming up August 28th to the 30th, the Foundry Weekend. It's going to be phenomenal.
August 28th or October 28th?
Oh, what did I say? August? It's October.
October 28th.
We got you.
October. Yeah, I appreciate that. October 28th to the 30th.
Perfect.
I love that.
information in the show notes.
And George, that's it's so important to have that, right? A group of kind of like-minded people to not only hold each other accountable, but be there to listen, be there to give them that space to kind of discuss some of this stuff that you're talking about. And it's not often that you can get invited into a van and it brings you to a good place, so that's special. So my one last question for you, George, is if there was one thing you could tell the audience that's listening right now that they could do right when they turn off this podcast to kind of change their life, anything to get them started from where they are now to improve in some capacity, what would that be?
Man, wow. Find purpose outside of yourself. So the thought there, Anthony, and that's a really good question. And several things just kind of stuck out, but finding purpose outside of yourself is the one thing that really comes to mind, right? And I've identified myself as a very good athlete for a period of time, right? I've identified myself as a husband, right? I've identified myself as a father. I'm coming to the point where, I'm not moving in the gym athletically the way that I had before. Man, there was such a transition that had to happen mentally and emotionally that had to take place in order for me to be able to still get some joy out of being in the gym. So the thought of finding purpose outside of yourself is something that I have leaned on and had to really embrace. And that's, for me, that's been serving people, right? So the thought of being able to have opportunity to, speak life into other people that's outside of my immediate family, man, it's purpose driven. Absolutely.
Tremendous. Where can we find you, George? How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's ownyourday_coaching. So that's my Own Your Day coaching. You can also find me at it's at George Dobbins or on Facebook. Own Your Day coaching as well.
Tremendous. For the Building Men audience, find us on Instagram, building.men. Our website is buildingmen.io. Check out our sponsors, FTR Apparel for all things building men, Become Stronger Industries for handmade steel maces, hammers, and other badass equipment. A new sponsor we're going to be bringing on board is the Chop Club with David Robinson. That'll be coming up soon. We'll put information on that in the show notes. And also check out the virtual coaching group for young men in middle and high school called The Foundation. Information is up on our website. Brother, it was good to have you back in studio.
Felt
Love
good.
seeing you. George Dobbins,
good.
This was a great time, my man. Toying with the idea of bringing in Barry White, Hot Lava, and CrossFit Truth as part of the title for this episode. To the audience, go a step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.